Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. This time we will going to study about the different properties of the lubricants. So let's start. So the very first property of the lubricant is viscosity. So what do you mean by viscosity? Viscosity is the property by virtue of which a liquid or a fluid offers resistance to its flow. It means that it is that characteristic properties due to which oil resists its own flow. Viscosity index can be defined as the rate of change of viscosity with temperature. So, how can we measure this viscosity? We can measure or check the viscosity by varying ranges of temperature. And this measurement is known as viscosity index. So, viscosity index is the rate of change of viscosity with temperature. It is of two types, high viscosity index and low viscosity index. Oil having a high viscosity index are usually preferred as a good lubricating oil. This is because they show very less variation in their viscosities with small fluctuations in the temperatures. As we know that oil becomes thin on heating. Why? Because this is an hydrocarbon. Hydrocarbon, we have covalent bonds. So whenever a hydrocarbon is heated, this covalent bond is broken down. As a result of which the viscosity falls off. If the decrease in viscosity is so rapid, the oil is said to have a low viscosity index. So a good lubricating oil should have a high viscosity index. How can we measure this viscosity? We can measure this viscosity with the help of this instrument. So this is a redwood viscometer. It is basically used to measure the viscosity with changes in temperature. This is specifically a redwood viscometer is used in India. Other than this, we have other viscometers too. A Seibold viscometer is used. It is also used to check the viscosity of the oil. So the viscosity of the oil is expressed in terms of seconds of the respective apparatus because it is measured as the time taken for a fixed volume of the oil to flow through the orifice of the oil cup of the apparatus. So here what do you mean by orifice? Orifice is basically the hole through which the oil is poured down from the oil cup to the flask and then it is collected. So we need to take the calculated quantity of oil into the oil cup of the viscometer. Then we need to increase the temperature at a uniform rate, and for every for example, if we have taken the temperature standard temperature gap of 5 degrees Celsius, then for each 5-degree rise in temperature we need to check the flow rate of the oil which we have taken. So we need to note down the time which is required to flow the whole quantity of oil from the oil cup to the flask. So this is how we need to check the viscosity of the oil in seconds. As I have already told you that in our country, redwood viscometer is commonly used. We have two types of viscometer in India, redwood viscometer number 1 and viscometer number 2. One is usually meant to check the viscosity of thin oils, whereas viscometer number 2 is used to check the viscosities of thick oil. Now, after checking the viscosity of the oil, we can plot a graph between the viscosity and temperature, and we can see that by plotting a graph, we can see that we have got a positive slope. It indicates that as the temperature increases, the viscosity of the oil decreases as it is shown in the graph. So why it is required to check the viscosity of an oil? What is the significance of this viscosity, or why we need to check this viscosity? The significance of this viscosity is that it helps in the selection of a good lubricating oil. For instance, a light oil have low densities and easy flowability. So these oils are generally used on parts moving at a high speeds. Whereas in contrast, if we talk about a heavy oil, they are used on parts moving at a slow speed under a heavy loads. So this value of viscosity tells us about the stickiness of the oil. Now let us talk about the next property, that is flash and fire point. What do you mean by flash and fire point? So, flash point is the minimum temperature at which oil gives enough vapors that ignite for a moment. For example, for 1 second or for 2 seconds, when a small flame brought near it. Whereas fire point is that minimum temperature at which oil gives enough vapors which burns continuously at least for 5 seconds when a small flame is brought near it. So flash point is basically the ignition temperature and fire point is that temperature at which oil catches fire. So these values help us to know the highest temperature up to which the oil can be used. Here we have shown you the instruments through which we can calculate the flash and fire point of the oil. So in this slide, you can see there are two types of instrument. The number one, this is the Penske Martin apparatus, which is used to check the flash point of an oil. And this is the Abel's close cup apparatus. The two apparatus, both are the close cup apparatus, and they are used to check the flash and fire point. So what is the significance again? Why we need to check the flash point? A lubricating oil selected for a job should have a flash point which is reasonably above the working temperature to ensure safety against the fire hazards during the storage, transport and use of lubricating oil. So these value basically tells us about the burning temperature of the oil. So we need to check the burning temperature of the oil before its application so as to prevent the fire hazards. It is also helpful for identification and detection of contaminants in the oil, because addition of any contaminants will surely going to change the temperature at which the oil will going to ignite. Now let us talk about the next property, that is cloud point and pour point. Cloud point is that temperature at which oil gives cloudy or hazy appearance. So this is the specific temperature at which the crystallization begins inside the oil. That is, the waxy substances which are present in the oil, they begins to crystallize. If we lower down the temperature again, then what will happen? We will get a pour point. So what is pour point? Pour point is defined as the temperature at which oil ceases to flow or pour. So finally we will get a temperature at which whole oil will going to freeze out. So at this temperature, the flowability becomes zero. So these characteristics physical constants indicates the suitability of the lubricants at lower temperature. As if we talk about a flash and fire point, that tells us about the suitability of the lubricants at higher temperature. Whereas cloud and pour point tells us about the suitability of the lubricants at lower temperature. So the oil should have a cloud and pour point value much lower than the machine working temperature. Otherwise what will happen? The oil may solidify and this may cause jamming of the parts. Let us now talk about the emulsification number, which is also known as a steam emulsion number. Emulsion is the property of the oil to get mixed with water, forming a mixture called emulsion. So emulsion is formed when the oil mixes with the water. But pure water is mixed with pure oil. When pure water is mixed with a pure oil, liquid separates out. They do not form a homogeneous mixture. But if the oil is contaminated, the rate of separation is decreases. An emulsion of either oil in water or vice versa may be formed. So emulsion is basically is not good for a lubricating oil because it tend to collect the impurities which may cause abrasion, which may cause blocking of the oil lines. It may also leads to the corrosion of the metallic parts. So a good oil should form such an emulsion which should break off easily. So it is essential that oil should form such an emulsion which break off readily. This property of a lubricant is known as de-emulsification number. So how can we determine it? It is determined by noting the time required in seconds for a given volume of oil to separate out in distinct layer from an equal volume of condensed steam under standard condition. So what we need to do, we need to take a calculated quantity of oil in a test tube. Now we need to mix this oil with the steam which is bubbled at 100 degrees Celsius. As a result of which we will get a homogeneous mixture of oil and steam which is known as emulsion. Now we need to keep this emulsion at room temperature for cooling. When the oil will cool, the steam will condense, as a result of which both the phases will separate out. So this time which is required for the separation of the phases is basically noted as a steam emulsion number. So lower the steam emulsion number, quicker the oil will separate out from its emulsion. So better will be the lubricating oil. Let us now talk about the next property which is known as aniline point. It is defined as the minimum equilibrium temperature for equal volume of aniline and oil sample. It is determined by thoroughly mixing equal volume of aniline and oil sample in a tube and heating the mixture until a homogeneous solution is obtained. So what we need to do, we need to take the equal volume of aniline and oil and we need to mix both the solutions. But we need to heat the solution to get a homogeneous mixture. Now, after getting a homogeneous mixture, then this solution is allowed to cool at specific rate until the two phases just separates out. Now, the temperature corresponding to this particular observation is reported as aniline point. That is, the time required to separate both the phases is known as aniline point. Now, what is the significance? Why we are doing this? It gives an indication of possible deterioration of the oil in contact with rubber sealings and packagings, etc. Higher aniline point means that lower content of aromatic hydrocarbon, and lower aniline point means higher content of aromatic hydrocarbon. As we know that aromatic hydrocarbon have a pi bond, so they have a tendency to dissolve natural rubber and certain types of synthetic rubbers. Consequently, low aromatic hydrocarbon content in the lubricant is desirable. So, higher aniline point means lower concentration of aromatic hydrocarbon. It means that lower deterioration of the packagings and rubber sealing which are in contact with the lubricant. So, higher aniline point is desirable for a good lubricant. Let us now talk about the neutralization number. Neutralization number is another characteristic property of a lubricant. It is of two types. Number one, total acid number, that is TAN, and number two, total base number, which is known as TBN. Now let us define TAN first. It is defined as the number of milligrams of KOH, that is any base, required to neutralize any free acid present in 1 gram of oil. Whereas total base number is defined as the number of milligrams of HCl or any acid which is required to neutralize any base present in 1 gram of oil. So, for calculating acid number and base number, it is required to neutralize acid and bases with respective bases and acids. It is essential to determine acid value because these acids, if present, even in a small quantity, they will harm the machines during the lubrication. Actually, what acids do? Acid basically helps in the oxidation process. They basically facilitate the oxidation processes, as a result of which the corrosion occurs. So, if the lubricant has an acidic value, and when such a lubricant which is acidic in nature is applied to a machinery part, what will happen? It will going to attack the machine part. So, it is required to check the neutralization number of lubricant before its application. So these values help us to know the suitability of the lubricant. Higher TAN causes corrosion of the machine surfaces and it will cause more wearing and tearing. Now let us talk about the iodine value. Iodine value of an oil is defined as the number of grams of iodine taken up by 100 grams of the oil. So how much iodine is absorbed by the oil? This is the measure of the iodine value. Iodine is absorbed due to the unsaturation of oil. So if oil contain pi bonds, then these pi bond will break off and at the position of the pi bond, the iodine will going to absorb. So where does the iodine absorb? Exactly in the lubricant. It basically adds up across the double bonds. So if the lubricant has the double bond or it has an unsaturation, then it will going to absorb iodine. Now it is determined by the addition of a measured excess of solution of iodine bromide in glacial acetic acid to a weighed quantity of oil dissolved in chloroform or acetic acid. So what we need to do, we need to take this sample in acetic acid or a chloroform, and then to this sample we need to add excess quantity of IBR. Why? Because IBR will going to provide iodine. IBR is a source of iodine here, and this iodine will going to absorbed over the double bonds of the lubricant. So the amount of iodine which is absorbed will tell us the amount of unsaturation. Now why it is required to check the unsaturation? This is because unsaturation means having a pi bond, and we know that pi bond are more reactive than the sigma bond. So if the lubricant contain more unsaturation, it means that it will going to react with the material with which it is in contact. So it is desired that iodine value of a lubricant should be low, or we can say that it should have a less concentration of pi bond. So addition of halogenating agent to the double bond is allowed to proceed to completion. Now the unused IBR is then back titrated against and standard hypo solution using starch as an indicator. So in this test, we are using excess amount of IBR. This IBR will provide a source of iodine. So iodine will going to absorbed at the position of pi bond, but the unused iodine can be back titrated, can be calculated by back titration with the help of hypo solution. Why it is required? By removing the unused iodine, we will get the amount of used iodine, and this will tell us the exact amount of unsaturation present in the solution. So which type of titration is this? This is a hypo solution titration. Here starch is used as an indicator, and hypo solution is a standard solution which will going to absorb iodine and will form sodium iodide. Now what is the importance of this iodine value? It basically measures the degree of unsaturation and hence the tendency of fatty oil to absorb oxygen. Okay, so this is about the iodine value. Now let us move forward about for the next property, that is saponification number. So what is saponification number? Let us define it. It is the number of milligrams of KOH which is required to saponify the fatty material present in 1 gram of oil. So this test tells us the amount of fatty material present in the oil. How do we determine it? It is determined by refluxing a known quantity of oil with a known excess of KOH and then titrating the unused KOH with the known acid. So in this calculation, what we need to do? We need to check the amount of KOH which is used for saponification. What is the significance of this test? As we know that mineral oil do not undergo saponification, whereas animal and vegetable oil undergo this test. This is because mineral oil do not have a fat content. So this test gives an indication of the amount of animal or vegetable oil added to the mineral oil. Generally, animal oil or a vegetable oil is added to a mineral oil so as to increase its viscosity. So in this way, the oil get adulterated. So now, saponification value tells us about the adulteration of the oil. Now let us come to the last property of this lubricant, which is known as carbon residue. So what is carbon residue? Carbon residue is the residue which is left when the lubricant is all used. Whenever we apply a lubricant into a machinery parts, a time comes when the lubricant fully exhausted. So after the removal of the lubricant, there occurs a residue layer in the on the machine surfaces. So lubricating oil contain a high percentage of carbon in combined form. On being subjected to very high temperature, they basically decompose and form a carbonaceous deposit. So this deposit is known as carbon residue. So there are two methods by which we can calculate the carbon residue. In this PPT or presentation, I am basically telling you all the one method by which you can calculate the carbon residue, and this is Conradson apparatus. So by using the Conradson apparatus, we can easily calculate the carbon residue. For this, what we need to do? We need to take a weighed amount of sample in a silica crucible, and then it is again placed inside an iron crucible, as you can see here in the Conradson apparatus. This is a silica crucible inside, and it is again kept inside another crucible, iron crucible, and it is again kept in the another crucible. So there are three crucible, one over the other, to prevent the heat loss. So inside the known amount of fuel is taken into a silica crucible, which is in turn is taken up into the iron crucible, and then again the iron crucible is placed in a third large crucible. Okay. Now here the heat is supplied to the crucible through a burner at a prescribed rate till the vapors of all the volatile matters burn completely. Now we need to do this process for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the silica crucible is removed, cooled, and then it is weighed. So after getting a weight, we can easily calculate the carbon residue percentage. So percentage of carbon residue can be calculated by the formula, that is weight of residue which we have taken, weight of residue which is present in the crucible after 30 minutes upon total weight of original sample which we have taken for this purpose into 100. So carbon residue should not be more. A good fuel should not have a residual carbon after its significant usage, because it tends to fill the surface between the metals joints, and hence it basically jam or choke the moving or sliding surfaces. So a good lubricant should have a low carbon residue values. So by this video, we got to know about all the information about the characteristic properties of the lubricant. So for summarizing it, we can have a quick revision that a good lubricant should have a flash and fire point high than the working temperature. A good lubricant should have cloud and pour point low, whereas aniline point should be high, and saponification value should be low, iodine value should be low, and carbon residue should be low. So thank you.